join hand with the Notorious.
The C virus is taking over the world. When people catch it, they get strange cross-shaped marks on their faces, which is why everyone calls them the Cross. These infected people aren't like regular zombies. They can think and act like normal humans, but they've lost all sense of right and wrong. The virus makes them do terrible things, following their worst thoughts without any care. They kill people, hurt others, steal, and do horrible things, simply because they want to. Regular good people find it hard to survive in this world, and those who do survive often become almost as bad as the infected. This story is about the Pratt family, which has 13 people in it. The oldest daughter, Adeline, tells us what happened to them. From the outside, they look like a happy family, but there's something very wrong inside. We first see this when we notice their happy-looking house decoration is covered in blood. Adeline tells us she stayed alive because of her father, but he isn't a good person like others think. He kept everyone going by telling them their behavior would decide if they went to heaven or hell after death. Her father was very religious, but Adeline stopped believing after everything she went through. Now she only keeps going because she wants to see her father suffer in hell. The Pratts owned a big horse ranch surrounded by forests and hills. One day, Adeline visits Max, who fixes saddles at the ranch. While he's fixing her saddle and warning her about horse accidents, she secretly steals one of his tools and hides it in her hat. The Pratt family had 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. Adeline was 18 and the oldest girl, but she had 2 older brothers, Joseph, 21, and Matthew, 19. The youngest was baby Ellie, who Kaylin usually watched. Her sister Hannah was 16, and her younger brothers John and Paul were always together. Their grandmother had died recently, leaving only their uncle Ellie, who Adeline said was crazy. Their father Joseph was Christian, and everyone feared him. Adeline says he built the ranch from nothing and was incredibly strong. Everyone either pretended not to see what he did or was too scared to say anything about it. One day, Adeline sees her father coming from a dark corner with her sister Emily, and he's fixing his pants. Their mother tries to keep people from noticing. Now that Adeline is 18, she decides to stop this. She asks to talk to her father privately in the kitchen, not letting him see the tool she stole. When Adeline tells her father to stop hurting Emily, he punches her face so hard he breaks her nose. The tool she stole falls out of her hat. While she's on the ground, her father tells her women shouldn't talk back to their fathers. He takes off his belt and beats her badly. When her mother sees this happening, she just leaves, when Joseph tells her to. The beating stops when people start yelling outside. All the horses are running around scared and nobody can control them. Adeline goes to her room, gets her gun and aims at her father from her window. That's when she hears a strange sound, like coyotes but more human-like. This sound would change everything. They see infected people coming from the trees, chasing a horse. Joseph tells his men to get their guns and his family to go inside. One man looks at the trees and sees hundreds of infected people coming. Men, women, and children covered in blood with cross marks on their faces. Most carry weapons, and many women aren't wearing much clothing. Thousands of infected people run toward the ranch, moving faster and faster. The ground is red where they've killed horses. Everyone runs to the main building, but it's hard to see in the dark. The ranchmen shoot at the infected, but even when they hit them in the arms, legs, or chest, the infected keep coming with evil smiles. The men on the roof realize there are too many infected people. Joseph tells his son Matthew to focus on protecting their family and keep shooting. Soon the infected surround Joseph and his men on the ground. They've learned to shoot the infected in the head to stop them, but there are too many. After many men die, Joseph tells everyone to run to the road. Near the house, Uncle Eli shoots infected people while helping the family get into trucks. Adeline, carrying lots of weapons, goes to help the men. An ambulance crashes into a truck nearby, and inside is a badly hurt infected person who's still smiling, even though he's almost cut in half. Back on the road, the last man besides Joseph and his children gets killed by the infected. Joseph says this is the devil's work. The dead man becomes infected and mentions Joseph hurting his daughter before Joseph shoots him in the head. Adeline sees Emily being chased by an infected person with a chainsaw into Mac's shop. When Adeline follows, both Max and Emily have turned into infected people. As they are into some crossed action, seems Adeline interrupted them. So Max tries to attack Adeline, so she shoots him. When Emily attacks her, bringing up their father's abuse, Adeline freezes, but Joseph shoots Emily in the head. Adeline says fear made her forgive her abusive father. Joseph, Emily, and Matthew escape with horses. Uncle Eli gets bitten and Joseph kills him right away. They lose John 8 and Paul 11 that night, but don't even stop to be sad. Out of 13, 9 family members escape on horses toward the hills. Adeline ends by saying they only survived because of her father's leadership. She forgave him then, but later realized she shouldn't have. They called this story Crossed Family Values. It's been a year since what happened at the ranch. Adeline is now different. She's changed a lot. On her 19th birthday, she's sitting on a hill, looking through her gun's scope. She shoots a man in the back on purpose. Not to help him, but to use him as bait. She wants to count how many infected people, the cross, are in the area, and she knows a dying man's screams will bring them out. Through her binoculars, she watches 6 infected people come and hurt the dying man terribly. More infected gather around him. Adeline planned for the gunshot echo to confuse them while she moves to a better watching spot. But her plan goes wrong. By nighttime, hundreds of infected are searching the hills for the shooter. Adeline didn't expect so many infected people to be there, so she has to run away quickly and meet up with her brothers Joseph and Matthew. 2 weeks later, the 3 siblings share what they found after checking different areas. Things are getting worse. Adeline found about 100 infected in the west, and Matthew found even more in Salt Lake City. The temple there was destroyed. Adeline gets angry when Joseph seems sad about the temple. She tells him the infected don't care about temples or God. Matthew tells her to be easier on Joseph because what they saw at the church in Salt Lake City was horrible. The infected church people were hurting children and doing terrible things. The siblings head home to their new place, a big farm high in the mountains, surrounded by fences. Their father named it New Paradise. They learned that the infected can't survive cold weather, which is why they chose this spot. Their father learned from every bad thing that happened to them, especially after seeing infected Air Force pilots who could still fly planes and were crashing them for fun. At the farm, they built greenhouses for food and took in survivors, but their father would kill anyone who disagreed with him. Nobody dared speak against him. When Adeline gets back, she wants to see Kaylin, but her mother keeps making excuses. Their father looks different now, with a big beard, and talks about God all the time. He's taken in new people, 4 men and 10 women. Adeline realizes her father hasn't changed his bad ways. He sees women as just a way to have more babies. The first baby was just born at the farm. Their father takes them to see something disturbing. He's keeping an infected person prisoner for experiments. The infected person is missing arms and legs. Their father says God wanted him to keep this person alive for study. But when the infected person wakes up, he mentions how their father hurts family members for his own pleasure. The next morning, Adeline says goodbye to everyone at the farm. She notices her sister Hannah is pregnant, and so is another woman who claims it's God's child. Deep down, Adeline knows these are her father's babies. While watching some survivors that night, Adeline finally understands the truth. She remembers what the infected prisoner said, how strange her mother acted about Kaylin, and realizes her father sent her away from the farm on purpose. She rushes back home and finds her father in bed with her sister Hannah. Hannah says she chose this, but Adeline only wants to know where Kaylin is. Her father takes her to a locked shed. Inside they find something horrible. Kaylin has turned into one of the infected, is tied to a table and is pregnant. The infected... Kaylin smiles wickedly and tells Adeline how their father hurt her. Watching her infected sister Kaylin describe over and over how their father got her pregnant and hurt her makes Adeline completely lose control. She spins around to shoot her father, but he moves faster than her. He pushes her gun down with one hand and uses his other hand to slam Adeline's head into the doorframe. Blood sprays out from her face like party confetti shooting from a cannon. Hannah is screaming, but their father Joseph won't stop. Adeline doesn't care about the pain anymore. She starts shouting all his horrible crimes. She calls him a murderer, a child abuser, and someone who hurts his own children. Joseph screams back at her, "I am God's prophet. Everything I do is by His will." Miles away, at Adeline's old watching spot, 3 infected people have found all her things. 2 infected men look through her telescope and spot the group of survivors in the town below, while another infected person is playing with Adeline's waist. One infected man gets excited about finding the survivors. The older infected man starts doing inappropriate things with the telescope, and the third one is dancing around with Adeline's waist on his head. Soon the whole town below is burning, and the infected swarm the survivor group. Their numbers grow as they turn every survivor into one of them, and then complete chaos breaks out. Back at the farm, we see Adeline again. She's been locked up in the same shed where they kept the infected prisoner. Her mother comes in and tells her it might have been God's plan that the infected prisoner died the same day they locked up Adeline. Her mother offers food while Adeline begs her to see the truth, to understand what their father did to Kaylin, how he first tried to use her to have babies and then got her infected. But her mother isn't thinking clearly and is lost in her own world. She says it's all her fault. She tried to make Kaylin understand their new way of life, but Kaylin wouldn't listen. She claims Kaylin went into the infected prisoner's cell by herself, and by the time the men tried to save her, it was too late. "Oh, Addie, why did you come back now?" her mother says. "In the fall, the baby would have come, and you wouldn't have had to see that." Even though her mother can't face the truth, Adeline can. She tells her mother that Kaylin didn't accidentally wander into the infected cell. She went there on purpose to kill herself because of what their father did to her. Her mother still won't give up her false beliefs. She thinks this is God's way, and that their father has been chosen as the new prophet. Adeline calls her mother disgusting, but her mother defends herself the same way she did with Kaylin. She tells Adeline this is how they are supposed to live on earth now. God has cleaned everything so they can start fresh, and only their father knows the way. God guides your father's hand. The prophet's bloodline must stay strong for what's coming, she says. Adeline asks if God was also guiding their father when he was hurting Emily. Outside, Joseph is watching over the building of a new church on the farm when Sam rides up with terrible news. The infected have picked up Adeline's trail. There are too many to lead away, and they'll reach the farm by nightfall. Joseph storms into Adeline's cell, screaming, "I should have named you Lilith, you devil's child. Thank the Lord for keeping us hidden until now." Adeline, with her bruised eye and almost broken nose, calls out her father for who he really is, a sick old man who likes to hurt children. While this argument between Adeline and Joseph continues, out in the woods the infected are getting closer and closer to the farm. 2 men from the farm who are supposed to watch for danger spot the infected coming near. Meanwhile, back at the farm, the fight between Joseph and Adeline turns physical. Joseph punches her and breaks her nose again, just like a year ago. But unlike last time, Adeline doesn't flinch or feel scared. Instead, she starts laughing loudly, just like the infected do. "The devil is in you, girl," he says, which only makes Adeline laugh harder. With blood covering her face, she looks up and asks her father if that's why he never hurt her like he did Emily. In the woods, the two men watching the infected are getting nervous. The younger one tries to shoot one of the infected, but the older one stops him. If they shoot, they'll be discovered, and the farm won't know how close the infected are. But in this tense moment, the young man accidentally pulls the trigger. The bullet hits one of the infected in the head, but the old man knows it's too late to hide now. Back in Adeline's cell, Joseph shows his true evil nature. He grabs Adeline roughly, pushes her against the wall, and starts to do the same terrible things he did to Emily and Kaylin. Outside the cell, the men and women are rushing to set up defenses, since Joseph isn't there. A pregnant woman has taken charge, telling them to set up traps, while Adeline's mother looks for Joseph. In the woods, the young man who fired the shot is getting his face eaten by an infected person while the old man tries to run away. But as he runs, he falls into one of their own traps and gets stabbed in the neck. Back in Adeline's cell, Joseph is furiously angry. He points to a jar of blood he collected from the infected prisoner and tells Adeline she isn't his blood. She's like this, infected blood, full of evil. And just like the infected, one drop of this blood will show her true nature. The infected have now reached the farm's outer edges, but many are getting caught in the farm's defenses. One infected trips a wire that sets off an explosion, killing many of them. But it's not enough to stop them all, so the pregnant woman in charge tells everyone to light the fire lines. With a hissing sound, a huge circle of fire surrounds the farm. In the firelight we can see all their preparations: fences, explosives, and even a machine gun. For a moment, it seems like their plan is working because the infected are burning in the fire. An old man celebrates by raising his middle finger. But then the pregnant woman realizes they've made a terrible mistake. Because of the fire, every infected person within 50 miles will be able to see them, and the fire won't be enough to keep them all back. Everyone starts shooting, trying to buy as much time as they can. Inside the farm, another horrible scene unfolds as Adeline's mother comes into her cell and catches her husband attacking their daughter. "My God, Joseph, what have you done?" she says. Joseph tries to say Adeline isn't their daughter anymore, but her mother isn't listening. She helps Adeline, who is covered in blood and barely conscious, and then locks herself in the cell with Joseph. "Damn it, Joy, what are you doing?" he shouts. "She's a monster. The devil is in her. And I need to go outside if the farm is going to survive." Joy replies, "Maybe we're not supposed to survive." Adeline has woken up and sees what her mother is doing, but Joy won't let her daughter stop her. She tells Adeline to go help the family outside and then does something unthinkable. She takes the jar of infected blood and pours it all over herself. Within seconds, Joy has turned into one of the infected. A terrified and sweating Joseph turns to his wife and says, "Joy, what have you done?" She answers, "How else was I going to be on top, Joseph?" Then Joy takes off her clothes, grabs a lantern, and smashes it into Joseph's face. His face catches fire and his right eye is badly hurt, but Joy isn't done. She takes a knife, puts it between her legs, and shoves it straight into her husband's open mouth. The knife goes through the back of Joseph's neck and comes out easily. Adeline stands there horrified, watching her mother kill her father. Then she stumbles outside, barely keeping her clothes on, and sees the terrible destruction the infected have brought to the farm. Explosions are going off everywhere. People are running in all directions, and the infected are hurting, killing, and cutting up everyone they can find. While Adeline is standing there dazed, an infected man almost grabs her, but the pregnant woman who took charge shoots him just in time. The survivors who are left are on horses, and they offer one to Adeline. She thanks them and shows them a hidden trail they can use to escape. But Adeline has one last thing to do. She has to deal with Kaylin. During all the chaos, her little sister broke free and is now hurting herself and her unborn baby in a horrible way. With tears running down her face, Adeline has no choice but to shoot Kaylin. Adeline tells us that she lost her faith that day. She realized this apocalypse and these infected people weren't caused by God, but by some monster in a laboratory. She could have given up and died there, but she didn't. because she had family to live for. We see Adeline leave the cell and join the other survivors. They lose the machine gunner, who gets overwhelmed by the infected. For me, for Hannah, for Emily, for Eli, for Joseph, and for Matthew. For my family, I chose to live, she says. Then the group of survivors rides away into the night. A few months later, we catch up with Adeline. She watches a group of the Cross from a distance through her binoculars. She explains that survivors now call these groups gaggles. Through their observations, they've learned that a gaggle usually has 15 crossed. A large crossed woman suddenly kicks a smaller man in the face, killing him. Now that the group is back to 15, she stomps on his head until it's nothing but mush. Adeline explains that when the crossed aren't hunting, they fall into a strange daze. Adeline and her group are hiding in a nearby trench, waiting for her signal to attack. The crossed might eventually destroy themselves, but that would take too long, so Adeline decides to speed up the process. As the survivors charge in, she introduces the newer members of the group. The core survivors, Adeline, Hannah, Marilee, Jack, and Kate, have been together since leaving New Paradise. The new members are Lisa and Mark, a grieving couple, and Jethro, a 17-year-old who survived alone thanks to his sharp shooting skills. The group relies on their 8 horses, which don't need gas and are incredibly loyal. As the battle unfolds, Jethro takes down Crossed one by one with his rifle. The group quickly eliminates the gaggle, but the noise attracts more Crossed. Kate orders a retreat. She is their temporary leader and Adeline's right hand. Kate is also pregnant, the same woman who once saved Adeline at the farm. As they flee, they head toward Hannah, baby Eli, and Marilee. Hannah, also pregnant, never fights, but Marilee has become an excellent shooter. As the Cross chase them, Marilee picks them off with deadly accuracy, giving the group time to turn and finish off the rest. Adeline tells us they mark each defeated gaggle with a notch on their belts. So far, they've taken down 14. They escape and set up camp in a remote area. Jack and Kate keep watch while the others rest, but Adeline stays awake. They have now crossed into Canada, but she worries about her brothers. Summer is coming, and they will be heading back to New Paradise, unaware of what happened there. The next morning, Adeline talks to Kate and Hannah, telling them they need to go back. Kate isn't surprised. She had suspected this for weeks. Hannah argues, saying that both she and Kate are pregnant and this is a safe place to give birth. Adeline doesn't listen. She plans to gather supplies and put Hannah in the wagon. The argument strains their relationship, and Hannah refuses to talk to her for days, but Adeline doesn't care. Finding her brothers is more important. A week later, they reach Nebraska, hoping to intercept Matthew. As Adeline and Kate study a map, Jack suddenly warns them of 3 SUVs speeding toward them. The men in the SUVs surround them, trying to steal their horses. Hannah, Marilee, and baby Eli hide in the wagon while the group attempts to reason with the attackers. They argue that survivors should fight the Crossed, not each other, but the men don't care. Their leader demands they surrender their horses. Adeline has a plan. She gives Marilee a subtle signal. The girl disappears into the wagon and aims her rifle through a small slit. Adeline rides forward, pretending to negotiate. The leader, a cruel man, curses at her. That's when Adeline gives the signal. Marilee shoots him in the neck. Chaos erupts as the group flees toward the hills. Bullets fly everywhere. One of the men shoots Kate's horse, but Jack pulls her onto his just in time. Meanwhile, the wounded leader of the attackers shouts in frustration. Jethro's horse is also shot. Thankfully, he is close to the wagon and manages to grab onto it. Hannah strains to pull him inside as the leader screams at his men to stop shooting the horses. But Jethro has been badly wounded. He has a deep wound in his stomach. Meanwhile, Lisa rides alongside the wagon, trying to keep the SUVs away. One of the vehicles swerves toward her. Mark rushes to protect his wife, and Marilee takes aim at the driver, killing him instantly. But as the SUV veers away, a man in the back seat shoots Mark in the back with a shotgun. Mark is killed instantly. A devastated Lisa rides toward him but gets shot in the hip. With Lisa injured and Mark dead, the attackers manage to capture the wagon. The remaining SUVs circle it while their leader, still bleeding, shouts up at the hills. He taunts Adeline's group, describing in gruesome detail what he will do to Hannah and Marilee if they don't surrender. From their hiding spot, Kate, Jack, and Adeline discuss their options, but Adeline refuses to listen. Ignoring their pleas, she loads her revolvers, jumps on her horse, and charges straight at the men, guns blazing. For a moment it looks heroic, but then one of the men shoots her horse in the leg. The animal stumbles, throwing Adeline to the ground. Kill them all, the leader shouts. But before his men can act, a gunshot rings out, and the leader's head explodes. Shocked, Adeline looks around and sees a lone cowboy approaching, shooting at the attackers. As he gets closer, she realizes it's Matthew. Overjoyed, Adeline screams his name as Jack and Kate join the fight. Together they unleash a storm of bullets. One SUV is completely shredded, its interior splattered with blood and guts. The last pickup truck tries to escape, but Jethro shoots out its tires. The group doesn't hold back. They fire relentlessly at the truck, ensuring no one inside survives. Liza shoots with tears streaming down her face, mourning Mark. When it's over, they don't even need to check. The men are dead. Finally, Adeline and Matthew embrace. She holds onto him tightly, cherishing this moment. For the first time in months, she feels a spark of happiness. But soon, reality sets in. Mark is gone. Jethro and Liza are badly hurt. Half of their horses are dead. Worse, without enough horses, they won't reach her other brother, Joseph, in time. And worst of all, when they do return to New Paradise, they will have to face their crossed mother. The scene opens at a hospital, where the group had to make an unplanned stop. Hannah had gone into labor, and despite having basic supplies, they needed specialized medical equipment for the delivery. Outside the hospital, Adeline stands observing the NICU, filled with decomposed infant corpses. Her experiences have left her emotionally numb. The grotesque sight of decaying babies fails to affect her. In the background, Hannah's labor continues, having lasted 6 hours in this nightmarish setting of blood-stained walls, rotting bodies, and the overwhelming stench of death. Under Kate's supervision, Hannah successfully delivers a baby boy. As new life enters this desolate world, Adeline reflects on their situation. They've been delayed here for 2 days, putting them almost a week behind schedule to intercept Joseph. Hannah names her son Adam, symbolically marking him as perhaps the first child born into this new world. The entire group, except Adeline, celebrates the birth of baby Ely. Marilee, Jethro, Matthew, and even Jack join in the celebration. Kate, herself expecting soon, holds Adam with tears of joy. Adeline maintains her distance, watching the celebration with visible disapproval. As the group's leader, she bears the burden of considering challenges others might overlook. Walking through the blood-stained corridors, she mentally tallies their numbers. 10 people including baby Adam, with only 5 capable survivors counting the pregnant Kate and young Marilee. Kate's due date approaches within a week, and Marilee is just 8 years old. Seeking solitude, Adeline finds Liza outside, the only other person uninvolved in the celebration. Since her husband's death, Liza has remained mostly silent. Though they managed to remove the bullet from her hip, the lack of proper medical care means she'll likely walk with a permanent limp. When Adeline attempts to share news of Adam's birth, Liza responds with silence initially. Finally breaking her silence, Liza shares her observations of the local crows, while expressing understanding of Adeline's concerns. She questions Adeline's strategy for managing 2 newborns plus 2 injured members, herself and Jethro. The crows they watch pick apart a deer carcass, a grim parallel to their situation. Adeline apologizes to Liza for Mark's death, explaining that stopping to help would have meant death for everyone. However, Liza clarifies that her anger stems not from Adeline's decisions, but from her own loss of hope and purpose. She declares her intention to remain at the hospital, waiting for the infected to arrive, so she can exact revenge. Returning inside, Adeline avoids Hannah's attempts to introduce her to Adam and instead calls a meeting with Kate and Matthew. She proposes traveling alone to New Paradise, believing she can make better time on horseback by herself. Kate agrees with the plan, and Matthew insists on joining her, since Joseph is his brother too. Adeline instructs Kate to wait 4 weeks for their return, suggesting they meet at 3-month intervals at the rendezvous point if trouble arises. When Kate asks if Adeline will say goodbye to Hannah and Adam, Adeline deflects, saying she'll meet them upon her return. Matthew realizes how his sister has become hardened by their experiences. As they depart, Adeline finds comfort in horseback riding, pushing her mount so hard that Matthew must intervene. He discovers her crying, finally showing vulnerability, and offers comfort. During their nighttime rest, Adeline confesses her emotional detachment to Matthew. She admits she would trade the babies for horses if given the choice, and considers abandoning the group after finding Joseph. Matthew reassures her, reminding her of her strength and leadership. Though no longer religious, he encourages her to maintain some faith to survive their harsh reality. After 5 days of travel, they encounter a grotesque scene near New Paradise, a massive graveyard of vehicles and humans, with dismembered bodies displayed on stakes, indicating active crossed presence. The narrative shifts to Joseph, who has already reached New Paradise but has been captured and tortured by the crossed. Through brutal circumstances, Joseph becomes infected and commits horrific acts, including encountering their mother, who has also been turned. Matthew and Adeline continue searching, with Adeline sharing her plan to lead the group south rather than north, believing fewer people means less danger. She envisions establishing a community with Jack's building skills, utilizing wind and solar power. Their planning is interrupted when they spot vultures, leading them to Joseph's dead horse. Determined to avenge their brother, they engage a group of crossed. Adeline uses Molotov cocktails while Matthew creates a diversion. Searching alone, Adeline discovers Joseph and their mother at a campfire, both turned and boasting of terrible acts. Adeline burns Joseph with a Molotov cocktail and flees to find Matthew, who has survived his encounter with the crossed. The story concludes with Adeline and Matthew escaping, feeling hopeful about gathering their group and building a new home. Unknown to them, their mother Joy has survived, clutching Joseph's severed head and vowing to pursue her children, maintaining the menacing smile characteristic of the crossed. The issue opens with a disturbing scene featuring Joy and another crossed man engaged in a brutal, violent act. After finishing, Joy uses Joseph's severed head, which she carries with her, to brutally assault the man, smashing his face and breaking his ribs. She then tears open his chest cavity with her bare hands, removes his internal organs, and crawls inside the corpse in a fetal position to spend the night. Joy appears to have retained more intelligence than typical crossed, demonstrating leadership abilities as she leads a group of crossed gathered around a nearby fire. Meanwhile, Adeline and Matthew are journeying back to the hospital where they left their companions, Kate, Jethro, Hannah, Liza, Marilee, and baby Eli. The 6-day return journey has been filled with conversations about their childhood, but as they near the hospital, reality begins weighing heavily on Adeline. Despite Matthew's attempts to point out the beauty around them, Adeline remains depressed. Worried about what they might find at the hospital, Adeline expresses to Matthew how seeing their mother and Joseph as crossed has changed her fundamentally. Matthew tries to offer support, reminding her that their friends are there for her, but Adeline's sole focus remains on keeping everyone safe. As they approach the hospital, Liza maintains her watch position outside, initially raising her shotgun at the sound of approaching horses, before recognizing Adeline and Matthew. When Adeline inquires about Kate's baby, Liza responds with only a grunt. Jack, spotting them from the hospital roof, announces their arrival. Inside, they find Marilee playing with baby Eli while Jethro cares for Hannah's child. During the reunion, Jethro reveals that Kate is in labor, but it's complicated news. She's been in labor for 2 days, and the baby is breech. Then Jethro drops another bombshell. He and Hannah got married while Adeline was away. This news infuriates Adeline, who confronts Hannah. Their argument escalates, with Hannah defending her decision and pointing out Adeline's own choices, including putting a rifle in young Marilee's hands. The argument is interrupted by Kate's condition. The baby is breech, with the cord trapped, presenting a life-threatening situation where they might only be able to save either mother or child. When Kate regains consciousness, Adeline tries to comfort her with dreams of their future ranch, but Kate insists that Adeline promise to save the baby if it comes down to a choice. Meanwhile, far from the town, Joy is wearing the skin of her latest victim like a grotesque garment, singing while gathering a growing following of Crossed. Her twisted song reveals her past in a devout Christian family and her new plans for her children. Back at the hospital, the situation intensifies when Liza begins firing her shotgun at imaginary threats. This false alarm enrages Adeline, who worries the gunshots will attract any nearby Crossed. The tension escalates further when Liza, having completely lost her grip on reality, holds baby Eli at gunpoint. Despite Jack's attempts to calm her, the situation turns tragic when Liza kills Jack and then accidentally shoots Eli during a struggle with Matthew. In a rage, Adeline brutally kills Liza, shocking everyone with her violence. The aftermath shows a transformed Adeline, who cradles Ellie's body while Matthew digs the grave. Inside, Jethro expresses his concerns about Adeline's leadership to Hannah, comparing her to their father and suggesting they should leave. Outside, Matthew apologizes to Adeline for not seeing things clearly earlier, leading to a moment of shared dark humor before they recommit to preventing any more deaths. The issue concludes with Joy, now wearing her victim's skin, leading a massive horde of Crossed while tracking her children by scent, reciting their names as she pursues them. Outside the hospital, Jethro and Matthew are occupied with the grim task of burying Liza and Jack's bodies, while Kate struggles through labor inside. In their preoccupation, everyone has forgotten Jack's crucial responsibility as a lookout. Everyone except Marilee, the 8-year-old who has proven herself to be remarkably capable with a rifle. Taking the initiative, she alone climbs the ladder to the roof to survey their surroundings. Meanwhile, Adeline finds herself wrestling with questions of faith. She contemplates how they were taught to believe, despite contrary evidence, and now faith is all she has left. She reflects on how more of their group had died by their own hands than from the actions of the cross. As Marilee reaches the rooftop, she encounters a sight that no child should ever have to witness. Terrified to her core, she scrambles back down the ladder, repeatedly calling out Adeline's name in panic. Suddenly she hears her mother's voice. Looking toward the tree line, Marilee spots her mother, now one of the cross, approaching while wearing someone else's skin, like a grotesque garment. Her mother peels off the man's face like a hood, revealing herself. For a brief moment, the hardened survivor in Marilee gives way to the child she once was. Memories of her childhood flood back as her mother, Joy, stands before her. Joy lets the stolen skin fall to her waist and spreads her arms in an almost angelic pose. "Mama has come all this way to find you, sweetheart," she calls out. "Mama wants her baby back." Then Joy's expression changes, displaying the universal smile worn by all the cross. She extends her tongue menacingly and reveals her horrific intentions. She wants to put her daughter back, up inside her. This shocking declaration snaps Marilee back to reality. Despite her trembling hands, her survival instincts remain sharp. She raises her rifle and manages to shoot her mother in the shoulder. Joy crashes to the ground, blood spraying from the wound, and Marilee releases a heart-wrenching shriek. Adeline hears the commotion and runs toward the gunshot, joined by Matthew, Jethro, and Jethro's infant. They find Marilee climbing down, hysterically repeating, "I shot Mommy! I shot Mommy! Mommy's here!" Adeline orders Matthew and Jethro to prepare the horses, but Matthew points out a critical problem. They only have 3 horses for 6 people, not counting the babies. Anger and determination flash across Adeline's face as she turns to Jethro. "Do you love my sister?" she demands. When he confirms, she instructs him to ensure Hannah comes with them. Even if he has to render her unconscious, she hands Jethro's baby to Matthew, directing him to saddle the horses, and grimly states that if Kate doesn't make it, they'll leave without her. Matthew silently agrees, though internally, he worries about what might happen if Kate and her baby both survive. How will they transport two newborns? Inside the hospital, Jethro bursts into Kate's ward with his gun drawn, urgently warning them about the cross surrounding them. However, both Hannah and Kate remain focused on the delivery. Hannah, especially, is determined to see through what she's worked toward for days. When Jethro attempts to forcibly remove her, she responds by breaking his nose with her elbow, sending him to the floor bleeding and shocked. Despite the chaos, Hannah has achieved a miracle by turning the breech baby, and now she can see its head emerging. The hospital fills with a cacophony of sounds. Hannah shouting encouragement, Kate's pain-filled screams, and Jethro's frustrated pounding on the floor. In this chaos, Kate's baby girl finally enters the world. But their moment of triumph is short-lived. A group of the Cross has breached the hospital's defenses, crashing through a window. Fortunately, despite his injured state, Jethro remains alert and ready to defend them. The next moment, Hannah, Kate, and her newborn daughter burst through the hospital's front doors, where Matthew and Adeline await with the horses. A new problem presents itself. Their exhausted horses won't be able to carry 2 riders each while outrunning the Cross. Yet Adeline, rather than succumbing to panic, devises a plan. "Get out the lanterns," she instructs Matthew, her gaze fixed ominously on the distance. Around the hospital, the Cross create havoc, destroying vehicles, setting trees ablaze, killing, sexually assaulting their own kind. When 3 horses rush past them, one Cross notices their escape attempt. The entire group gives chase except for Joy. Having led them here through her evolved, superhuman sense of smell that allows her to track her children, she walks in the opposite direction. Moving through the massacre as if strolling through a playground, Joy carries Joseph's head like a prized possession, seemingly unaffected by the grotesque activities of her fellow Cross. Inside the hospital, Joy encounters disturbing scenes. In the NICU, Cross members play with and consume the decomposing corpses of hundreds of babies. In Kate's delivery ward, one Cross lies on a gurney, using his own spilled intestines to mimic childbirth. Another consumes random pills, while others engage in sexual acts. Joy approaches the gurney, samples the fluids on the floor, and determines through taste and smell that while these aren't from her children, the scent is fresh enough to track. In the town streets, the Cross continue their reign of terror. Through a sewer grate, Adeline watches as one Cross smokes a makeshift cigarette while another brutally stomps on a victim. The survivors have used the sewers for escape, with the lantern-picked horses serving as a distraction. At a dead end, they pause to catch their breath while Jethro, Matthew, and others keep watch. Matthew approaches Adeline with troubling news. Kate hasn't stopped bleeding since giving birth. Adeline finds Kate lying on a makeshift bed, attended by Marilee and Hannah, who nurses her son. Hannah explains the bleeding could be natural or indicate internal hemorrhaging. There's no way to be certain. Adeline, placing a hand on Kate's forehead, desperately asks if she can continue. Kate, displaying remarkable strength, simply opens her eyes and announces, "Claw. Her name is Claw, after my grandmother." The moment is interrupted when baby Claw begins crying in Marilee's arms. Hannah quickly begins nursing both babies, but the plan has been compromised. Someone surely heard the cry. Adeline quickly organizes Matthew and Jethro to scout the eastern and western sewers while she checks the northern passage, which leads out of town. 5 minutes and then we move," she commands. Armed with a revolver and renewed determination, Adeline explores the northern sewer. She discovers a Cross member attempting to defecate into the sewer, accidentally dropping his axe. Adeline carefully retrieves the weapon and uses it to dispatch the Cross. Meanwhile, in the western sewer, Jethro encounters Joy, who attacks him with Joseph's head. After breaking his nose and ripping out his lip, Joy assaults him sexually. Back at the dead end, Marilee, Hannah, and Kate hear growling. A naked Jethro appears, calling out to Hannah for help. Kate recognizes he's been infected and warns them to run. Marilee fires at Jethro, but Kate grabs the gun, places it in her mouth, and apologizes to Merrily before the young girl pulls the trigger with grim determination. When Hannah and Merrily emerge from the sewer, they're joined by Adeline and Matthew. Before Merrily can explain Kate's fate, Joy and an infected Jethro ambush them. Jethro lifts Merrily by her hair while Joy, now completely naked, stands beside him, wearing Joseph's head as makeshift underwear. "We're all together, children, just like old times," Joy taunts. "Time to initiate Merrily. You know how we love our family secrets." Matthew springs into action, shooting Jethro in the shoulder and rescuing Merrily while Adeline provides cover fire. Joy attacks Matthew, and Jethro creates a distraction by displaying Joseph's head. Enraged, Adeline shoots Jethro through his right eye, causing his head to explode. Joy seizes the opportunity to attack Matthew, forcing Adeline to make a terrible choice. She uses the axe to cleanly amputate Matthew's left leg below the knee before Joy can bite and infect him. Joy, still smiling menacingly with Matthew's severed leg in her mouth, faces Adeline, who splits her mother's face in half with the axe. "Mom never knew what hit her," Adeline recalls. "I wonder if there was anything of our real mom left in that thing. I guess it doesn't matter. Mom wasn't much of a real mom anyway." After tourniqueting Matthew's leg, Adeline orders him to keep moving. Using the axe as a crutch and leaning on Adeline, Matthew manages to escape with the others. Adeline, Hannah, Merrily, baby Adam, and baby Claw. 8 days later, the survivors have found refuge in an untouched suburban house stocked with books, medicine, bottled water, and canned goods. The group's mental state has improved, with Matthew and Hannah caring for the babies while playing chess with Merrily. Adeline, maintaining her vigilance, announces she's going to search for gas for the truck outside. As Adeline contemplates their situation, surviving with 2 babies, a one-legged man, a woman, and limited ammunition, she realizes the challenges ahead. Driving is dangerous, as noise attracts the cross, who frequently patrol the roads. She's abandoned her dream of building a ranch, which died with their horses. But fate intervenes. The 3 horses that helped them escape have returned, having outrun the cross. Adeline rejoices, seeing new possibility in their survival. Perhaps they can not only establish a ranch but also traverse the land effectively with her makeshift family. This unexpected blessing reinforces her faith. Maybe someone is indeed watching over and rewarding the faithful. Well guys, if you at the end of this video, hope you liked it and hit subscribe. We promise to keep upcoming videos as engaging as possible. After we hit our target, we will come up with our own brand new stories in the same narrative format. You till then, stay tuned. Bye bye Batman.